is here to share his experience, strength, and hope with us. I'm really looking forward to his share because he says he's known Stephen an awfully long time, and I'm dying to hear those old stories. So, Billy, when you hear the computer tell you it's recording, you can take it away, and you have about 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. My name is Billy Hogan. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Suburban Men's Group. And now I've told you who I am and what I am and where I belong. I belong in AA. I'm a member. I'm interested in the third tradition. I have a desire to not drink. And I've been here since November the 1st, 1980. So for those 44 years of sobriety, I am beyond grateful. I am just deeply indebted to the higher power, to our program, and to the wonderful members of A&A. My dear friend Stevenson and I met a long time ago, as I was telling our hosts, and we've had a great time all these years. And he's a tireless servant, so I really do appreciate it. And usually I don't do humility and beyond for less than 100 people, but we're bumping right up against it at 99, so that's enough. And I always like to quote Vince Yo. He used to say, "Are there any newcomers?" And somebody put up their hand every time, and we say, "Well, we know you've had a bad year. You know, you've really had a bad year. We know it's not your fault. You know, we know it's her fault." And so I'm a big fan of all the speakers that we've had through all these years. Bob B calls them the great communicators. I think that's a very good description of Chuck C. and Clancy and all of the people that have come before us and to whom we owe an enormous debt. Chuck said that when I mentioned 44 years, Chuck C. said that if he'd have known it was going to be his last drink, he believed he'd had two. And I kind of think of it that way as well. Also, I had no idea that it was going to be this long between drinks. And so I am very, very grateful about that, though. I just had my birthday. And in fact, my home group is celebrating my birthday tonight. But I volunteered, and I never turned down a legitimate AA request. So I'd rather be here, and I'm so glad that you all have allowed me to join with you. I'm not here because I have any spectacular message or because I think I'm enlightened in any way. I'm here like one beggar talking to another about where the bread is. And it's right here. If you're having trouble, it's right here. It's right here in AA. My friend David P., who I noticed Mike is from Buffalo, David P. Likes to joke with me that he wonders what God is planning for me to say tonight. So I don't know. I don't have a clue. But I do know that my sponsor has always told me, Don M., who was my sponsor for 40 years and 5 months, he just passed away last year. Don M. was a spiritual giant in AA and carried the message so faithfully and so relentlessly. He spoke over 2,000 times out of town. That's commitment. And he used to always remind me that my job is not to deliver the message. My job is to carry the message. And I'm really grateful for that because I may not be delivering any message at all, but I try. And as my paralegal used to say, "Oh yeah, Billy, you're really trying." So my sponsor, Don M., was a spectacular AA. And if any of you have not heard him, please be sure and get on YouTube and listen to Don M. from Louisville, Kentucky. He was spectacular. And he used to say that we could get, as he was dying actually, in his last year, he discovered that page 20, it says that you could fit all of AA into one very small paragraph. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we can help meet their needs. That's really all I need to know. That is AA in a capsule. And It's a very powerful idea if I'm willing to follow it. And it doesn't say alcoholics. It says our very lives is expressed in constant thought of others. So I'm really glad that the directions are very clear in our book and are very clear from my sponsor. My job is to tell you what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. My job is not to tell you what it was like. What it was like may be entirely different for you than what it was like for me. We all have our own stories. As Ray O'Keefe used to say, we've only got the one story. You know, you've only got the one story. We drank until we couldn't drink anymore, and then we almost died, or we came to AA, and that's my story. I can quote Don very many times this evening, which I'm going to do with your permission, because his message is so clear. And Don Pritch used to say that a spiritual message is a clear message. And Don's first message that he liked the best was, you can never be discourteous and spiritual at the same time. And that's very, very important to me, because I don't know what spiritual looks like very much, but I got a real good idea what discourtesy looks like. And I don't want to be that way. I have been many times. I'm a 6'2", 225 pounds. And I was a divorce lawyer and a union labor lawyer, and kind of a bully sometimes. And Don was mightily unimpressed with it. He used to say, Billy, why is it that you have to demonize the other side to get your energy up to take them on? That he had never had any of those problems. He had never found those sharp practice or that misconduct that I was tend to find. But anything that I have that's worth repeating, I learned from the members of AA that I've tried to mention some of today. One of his big ideas was there are no big deals. He and I owned a company when he came back to Louisville, Kentucky 42 years ago, and he didn't have a quarter, and we needed to get him a car, so we started no big deals, and that's one of our main rules. Anytime I make a big deal out of anything other than God and the program, what I'm trying to make a big deal out of is myself. And I do truly hate that phrase, because it just goes all over me like a wet blanket. And I know when I'm trying to promote me, and it's not our way to do promotion. But I have a tendency to. Stevenson used to call me Cecil B. de Hogue. I was a promoter, and I like to put together deals and put together shows, and we had a lot of fun with it. But of course, I was always expecting a little bit of acknowledgement. And as Don always says, it was never quite adequate when people would applaud me. Just a little short. But I realize now that I got far more credit than I was ever deserved. I was with Don one time, and he said, Billy, you need to get a hobby. You're really pretty boring. All you do is the law and AA. And so I said, okay, I'll take yours. Don was a Civil War expert, truly an expert. And so I took up his hobby, and we went to a lot of battle sites, and we were in Appomattox one time, and he said, Billy, I think you think this is easy for me, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. You make it look easy. You're always kind. You're always generous. You're always very helpful to other people. And he said, Billy, I failed 50 to 100 times a day. And I was so lucky that I had so much faith in my sponsor that I believed him. And so failing 50 to 100 times is about spiritually failing. And since I've retired, I can really spot when I'm failing spiritually. He also said that unsolicited advice is always heard as criticism. Always heard as criticism. I stopped giving my 30-year-old little girl advice, and we have a wonderful relationship today. And she used to say, "Daddy, don't be lawyering me." And what she meant, I said, I would try to argue her into a corner, and she said, "Don't do that." Now we get along wonderfully because I give her no advice whatsoever. She's 30 years old and she doesn't need my advice at all. Don talks about our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are my disease. There's not even any overlap. They're one and the same. My belief system. Oh my goodness. I couldn't say it out loud when I got to AA, what I believed in. My relationships with women, my relationships with money, my actions were just abominable on a regular basis. I got to thinking about it a lot this year. As I said, I'm retired, but I also have been ill some, and so I've had time to really think. And it occurs to me that I wasn't careless. I was reckless. I didn't care what it cost, who it cost, how much it cost. I didn't count it as an accident if I didn't total the car. And by the way, I'm paying a hell of a price for it now. I've got 9 doctors, and one of them is a pain doctor. All he does is take in my entire spine, which I put through a windshield at about 50 miles an hour. I took a little nap. Well, actually, people call it passing out. And I hit a vehicle at about 50 miles an hour, and it was down a steep hill, just a ski jump. And I took out the windshield with my head, and boy, was that hard on my neck. And that was 44 years ago. And now I see a pain doctor very, very regularly who can do something called ablation, where they go in and they cauterize the nerves that are in my neck and hopefully stop them from hurting sometimes. Don used to always talk about this gift of life being magical. Look at your hand. Isn't that an amazing tool? It can wield an 18-pound hammer, or it can do cross-stitching, or it can do brain surgery. That's amazing. This world is magic. And I want to thank God every day, every breath I hope. I would rather take my last breath than take my next drink. I'll tell you that. I know. I couldn't live that way. I just cannot live without AA as the primary force in my life. I'm not saying I do it very well. I fail 50 to 100 times a day. But I certainly have an idea of what the rules would be if I did get a choice of how I was to live, and that is the AA way. And I do get a choice. I get a choice all the time. It's my choice every day. And what is your choice to be? That's what page 53 says. God is everything or he is nothing. What is your choice to be? And I believe that that choice is a wonderful choice. And God doesn't light the way with a searchlight. He lights the way with a pen light. I have to pay attention. I have to pay a little bit of attention. But the best part of AA, I think, and most spiritual pursuits are our stories. The stories are how we transmit our spirituality. And my story is, I only got the one story. And I don't think it's spectacular enough, but I just got the one. So I will tell you that I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, 77 years ago. It's straight out of The Great Gatsby. As a matter of fact, if you read The Great Gatsby, they refer to the Sealback Hotel in downtown Louisville. And that's the way I grew up, being at those kind of parties and being that kind of pain in the neck and that kind of constantly seeking adulation. And I thought I would get away with it. But the truth of the matter is that my reputation was probably suffering, but I had enough gunpowder that I could get away with murder. I was the chief prosecutor. No cop ever arrested me. I should have been arrested. I got stopped and, handcuffed 5 times, but they never took me in. Oh, it's you, Billy. What are you doing? Billy, we're going to take you home, which was good, I guess. But it probably cost me the last 10 years of my drinking, which was pretty horrendous. And every family has some tragedy. And when I was 6 years old, I was playing catch with my little sister. She was 5. And we were up on a roof where they built out the floor from the middle of the floor all the way out to the studs. And then they put up the drywall. And we were running around on July 23rd, 1953. And I pushed her, and she went through the rafters, and she fell 3 flights, and she was crushed on a concrete floor. And 9 days later, she died. And I don't know exactly what that did to me, but I know what it did to my mother. It kind of crushed her motherboard, you know. It just crushed her. Losing a child is fairly unimaginable, and it was impossibly hard on my mother, who also happened to be an alcoholic of my type, Irish, you know. I mean, remember that I'm actually Scottish, mostly. Hogue is really, really Scottish. And we came here in 1680, and I wrote a book about it when I retired, because it was pretty boring and I didn't have anything else to do. So I wrote a book about our family, and they were actually pretty decent people and pretty respectable. Nothing like me, actually. I remember one time I asked my father, I said, "Dad, how in the world did you hang in there with Mother?" I mean, from the age of 30 years old, she wasn't even 30 years old till she died at 60. He always was in there, hung in there with her. She was sent away to a treatment center the week after Annie died. She spent about half her adult life in the Institute for Living in Hartford, Connecticut. It wasn't the right place. It wasn't a treatment center for alcoholism. It was a lunatic asylum. And be careful how I say that. It was a mental health provider, not a alcohol treatment place. And so they never detoxed her. And all that time, it was really a tragedy. I had a lot of trouble as a child. I went to bed. I couldn't add. I couldn't do the alphabet. I was just a rattled problem child. And, you know, later I ended up getting through law school and being on the law journal. But how that happened, I don't really know for sure. It was a lot of the power was in there, I think. And a certain amount of hubris and work ethic that I had. I wasn't going to fail. I couldn't fail. That was just not acceptable. So I was a mess, I'll tell you that. And I had a secret. My secret was simple. I'm not enough. And you're going to find out. And you're going to make me go away. And when you're not enough, it's very hard to be confident. So you have a tendency to compensate. And so I also used to always say, I kind of coined this phrase, I may not be I may not be much, but I'm all I think about. And boy, that describes me perfectly. You know, I was self-centered to the last degree. And as I said, I wasn't just careless, I was reckless. I went to my first day of law school, and I had to go to law school. I wasn't going to be an accountant. I treated my way through math in high school and my little day school that I went to. And so we knew I wasn't going to be an engineer. And so I went to law school, and that first day, and they had a rush party. You know, one of those parties where they give you free whiskey. Free whiskey was always my nemesis. That was my real problem deep down. I could not handle free whiskey because I was afraid it would run out. And so I always made sure I got my share. And when I got my share, that was a lot of whiskey. As I said, I was a big man. And when a 6'2", 225-pound man goes down like a rock and takes out like the hors d'oeuvre tables, you know, it gets people's attention. I was, at that time, I also had a psychiatrist. Is the same psychiatrist that treated my mother very unsuccessfully. Is the same psychiatrist that treated my aunt. She died in the Pennsylvania Institute at 50. She was married to the president of Gillette. This disease will take you out quickly. As I mentioned, I'm very, very Scottish. And, the Irish gave the Scots a bagpipe as a joke. I mean, we're not real smart. We don't get it. We think kilts are formal wear. We think golf's a game. We think bagpipes are music. We're not real smart, but we don't give in. We never gave in to the British, and they lived next door. We never gave in. And that was one of my ways. I wouldn't give in. If somebody said, would you like a beer? And I said no, I had entirely misunderstood the question. It didn't matter where I was. I was going to have a beer if anybody else was. So consequently, that first day of law school, I got to drinking, and I was a cheerleader. I always had to be a cheerleader. I wanted everybody to come along. I needed somebody to like me, really. It's the truth. I wanted somebody to say, you're a good guy. And so I brought everybody back to my house and announced we were going skinny dipping. And to make my point, I dropped my clothes there in the living room. So I went out and got in the car naked, and a couple other lunatics came with me, and we drove over to this country club to jump in the pool. And as I came around the turn, I saw some young people making love underneath the paddle tennis courts. And me being a prince of a guy, that's what Don always says, oh yeah, Billy, you were a prince of a guy. I wanted to put some light on them. So I slammed on the brakes, and I backed up the car real quick to put some light on them, and I went over the cliff. And the car rolled down the hill, and it caught on fire. And to this day, I don't believe that big wrecker driver who I sat next to driving home, or those policemen or the firemen, really believed I had lost my clothes trying to put out that fire. But it was my first day of law school with both my hands wrapped in bandages, because I knew there was a price for drinking. My mother's name was O'Brien. That's kind of Irish, and the Irish are not real bright either, and we're bad to drink. And my mother in particular, my last year of drinking, I will move along here and finish easily on time. My last year of drinking, I was 32 years old, 31 years old, and I had a lot of significant titles. I didn't earn any of them in particular. I was just affable and a promoter. And so they gave me a chief prosecutor, for instance. They made me the head of the fundraising for the governor's campaign for the unions. And so I really was a mess. And I also got some benefits from having been involved in the campaign. So I went to Hawaii, and I had a little psychic break. I called my ex-wife and I said, you got to come and get me. I can't get out. I can't get out of the room. I couldn't unlock the room. The door locked on my side, of course, but I couldn't get out of the room. I was having a little psychic break. I sank a sailboat, and there were 9 people on board, and there were no life preservers. And the real problem is it was pitch dark and it was snowing. Only alcoholics go sailing in snowstorms. Okay, I was sailing, and so I went to intensive care for a good while, and the neurosurgeons couldn't figure out really what was wrong with me, and finally they decided it looked like maybe it was a touch of wet brain. It looked like I had insulted my brain so badly with so much alcohol for so long that I was hospitalized for a good while. And they couldn't really figure out what the problem was. And so they said, you need to quit drinking. So I did for 2 weeks, almost 2 full weeks. And then I got back to smoking that wacky tobacco, which was a little nerve-wracking as a chief prosecutor. But then, as I said, the police never bothered me because I was a pain in the neck. And so my second wife, she had to take her bar exam the day after I sank that sailboat. And you know what? She was first in her class, and she was so rattled, worried about me, that she flunked the bar the first time. And I thought, what a wimp. What was wrong with you? That's how sensitive I was. By the way, she went on to pass it in a couple of states and ended up being Disney's lawyer. So she was pretty bright. She didn't flunk the bar because it was her fault. was a union lawyer and the chief prosecutor. We could have a private practice. And so Halloween of 1980, I had a date with Wonder Woman. I was in a costume as a streaker, and I thought I should impress Wonder Woman if I could. And so I made up my mind I wasn't going to drink. The psychiatrist had told me he wasn't going to keep giving me the Valium and the Dalmane that he had given my mother and my aunt if I kept drinking, because I kept passing out and having seizures, and it was concerning some people. And so I told him that I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to drink on antabuse. I've seen my mother do that, and I'm not going to drink on antabuse. So you give me some antabuse, and that'll be the end of that discussion. And so he did. And it took me a number of years to recognize that it was about 6 or 7 weeks before I could not drink long enough to take the antabuse. So the idea that I really quit on my own, was kind of kidding myself, actually. I quit that night, Halloween night, November 1980. And nothing in my life has been the same. Absolutely nothing in my life has been the same since. And for that, I am immensely grateful. And I go to a lot of meetings. Don and I always had an expression, I'm too busy to miss meetings. And I think it was true for me. Gandhi said that he thought he needed to meditate for 2 hours a day. He was so busy, rather than 1. And that was what I needed. I needed to calm down that monkey mind of mine. And so I remember so clearly, Don had one very important idea over and above that you can never be discourteous and spiritual at the same time, was another one that the only thing that puts a footprint on reality is what I do. My thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are of no consequence. They mean nothing if I don't take an action based on them. If I don't do that insanity, as Don used to explain, my thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are my disease. There's not even any overlap. They're one and the same. I could steal this. The IRS won't know about this. Just crazy stuff. And oftentimes it looked like common sense. I'd say, well, everybody else is doing it, and so I would think, well, it's just common sense. But Don started me every day. We would do 86, 87, and 88. And I would ask to have God take away my self-pity. Self-pity is a real problem for alcoholics of my type. Feeling sorry for myself is a real problem. And so I would say 86, 87, and 88 every morning. And Don and I would read Chuck Chamberlain. Now we're going to talk about business. You boys are going to call me a lion mutt, but we're going to talk about business for a while. I'm supposed to help God's kids for fun and for free. And God will take better care of me than I could ever take care of me. And turned out to be absolutely right. My second wife had to leave me. I wouldn't come home, and I would get lost for 2 or 3 days, and I wouldn't have a good excuse, and that's what's called alcoholic of my type, chronic and incomprehensible demoralization. And so finally, she had to let me go. She said, Billy, I love you like a rainbow, but I can't stay around and watch you die. I'm not going to do it. And of course, I'm always careful to point out, she saved my life. I've been a member of Al-Anon for a good long time, because I was fortunate enough to run into a woman when I was speaking at the local jitter joint. And they had me speak there because they thought I was so arrogant and such a problem that I wasn't going to make it. So they decided they would put me into service, deep into service. Every Thursday at Our Lady of Peace, I would speak. And she was there in a little bathrobe. She wasn't there on a research project. She was a nurse, and I always think it's funny that she was such a tragic alcoholic, because the truth of the matter was her first choice was these drugs that just knock your block off, just fentanyl and that kind of stuff. And so we've been married for 37 years. And I got to tell you, some of those years didn't go so well. The first 10, she did great. And actually, she heard Don speak, and that was her last drink for about 10 years. And then some stuff happened, and we had a little girl, and she really didn't want to stop. It's what she tells me. I find that hard to believe, but that's what she tells me, and I believe her. So she would go out doing hard narcotics or doing knockout drinking. And it was, I tell you, if you're an Al-Anon of my type, I was not a volunteer for Al-Anon. Let me put it that way. You know, I didn't volunteer for AA, but I definitely didn't volunteer for Al-Anon. And I got to be an Al-Anon by way of my wife's behavior. And so I was kind of worried about her dying. As a matter of fact, you know, she was driving at night with a bottle of vodka under the front seat and not coming home till it was gone. And my little sisters were talking to me, and they, this little sister's husband had been very successful in the insurance business. And she said, do you think you would ever be able to convince anybody that you don't know something about alcoholism, Billy? You know, you helped start the American Bar Association Commission on Lawyers Assistance Programs with Stevenson, by the way. You know, it'd be kind of hard for you to pull off that you don't know anything about alcoholism. And what are you going to do when she runs into a car full of kids and kills them? So what I did is I bought an umbrella policy. Wasn't great Al-Anon, but it was pretty good lawyering. You know, that's the way I looked at it anyway. And so finally, simply put, we had a miracle. That's the only thing I can say. She's been sober now for 3.5 years. I called my sponsee, who was really a spiritual giant. He was a black man, first black doctor at the University of Louisville Medical School to be a gynecologist. And he took me on as his sponsor, and then he showed me a really spiritual person. And I was talking to him. I said, Ernest, you don't understand. I can't do this. I'm coming apart, man. And he said, hey, man, you can't be talking like that. You're supposed to be my sponsor. And so I said, you don't understand, Ernest. Carolyn's going to die. And we had a couple of trips to the hospital, and he said, well, let's talk about this St. Paul. And St. Paul had this stake in his side. It wasn't a thorn. The proper translation is a stake in his side. And he said, God, I can't do your work with this stake in my side. Kind of like my alcoholism. I can't do your work with this stake in my side. And God said, well, you're still going to have the stake. He said, no, I can't do it. And God said, my grace is sufficient. And that was my prayer for the next 3 years till Carolyn got sober. And she went to the Women's Healing Place, which is not the Louisville Country Club Tennis League, I'll tell you that. It's more like a jail. And she stayed for 100 days. And then she got out, and we were all excited. It was going to work just perfectly. And then she got to drinking some Listerine because her teeth were hurting. And so she got to go back. And now I can report to you that she's been sober for 3.5 years. And she is on fire with AA. She has girls come over here. Last night, I think I had 9 women here at the house. She has dinner for her and her AA girlfriends. And she told me something one time that really kind of got my attention. She said, you know, I never really had girlfriends. Now in AA, I have girlfriends. And I thought, that's cool. You know, she has real friends who are sober and who spend a lot of time on AA. And it makes me very happy for her. I can guarantee you, it makes my little girl happy too. You know, we think that we don't affect other people, but I don't think that's necessarily true. This lovely young lady has been married to me for 37 years, and most people are fairly amazed. They say, how do you put up with him? And she says, actually, I like him. So I feel good about it. And I always end with a thought by Thomas Merton. My mother was a a real devout Catholic, Darby O'Brien. I figured that out. And so she was very enthralled with Thomas Merton, who was a Cistercian monk right down the street from Louisville at the Trappist Monastery. And Merton said that a spiritual seeker is a person who, once they have experienced God, nothing else will do. And that was certainly my experience. Nothing else will do. And Don Pritz, who was one of my real heroes in AA, and became friends of ours, primarily because Carolyn put on weekends where Pritz would be the speaker. And Pritz was dying, and at his very last pitch, he said that he wasn't sure that he had the right answers, but he thought that he had probably found the right question. Have I made a decent contribution to life? That's what I'm after. That's what I'm interested in. And I always tell the same story when I finish. There was this incredible statue made by Michelangelo of David. And, you know, it's 14 feet, 6 inches high. It's quite something. And a reporter came up to Michelangelo and he said, "How in the world did you make this statue? It's just fabulous. It's just alive. It breathes." And he said, "Well, I got me this big old block of stone, and I got me some chisels and some hammers, and I chipped away everything that didn't look like David. And with me is a willing block of stone. And AA and our book and you people as the chisels. We've been chipping away everything that doesn't look like Billy Hogue, the recovered alcoholic. And this is what we got so far. Thanks a lot for letting me be with you."